the next session for the day. And the next session, let me actually introduce the subject to all of you. The next section is on the need for integrated communication. Like we all know how important integrated communication is in today's time and age. And to talk about this and give us some valuable insights, we have with us a wonderful panel jury. Please put your hands together for none other than Ankit Shah, Head of Marketing, Strata. Can we please have Mr. Ankit Shah on stage? Huge round of applause for Ankit Shah. Joining Ankit will be Chiara Saldanha, Creative Strategist, HK Strategies. Can we please have Chiara up on stage? Huge round of applause for Chiara. Next up, joining both of them, we have Karan Kumar, Group Chief Marketing and Growth Officer, Art Fertility Clinic. Please give a huge round of applause for Mr. Karan Kumar. Thank you so much for taking out time, sir. Joining all of them, we have with us Shan Jain, Independent Branding and Marketing Consultant, Bridge to Ocean 9. Please put your hands together for Shan Jain. Welcome to the panel. Baja do yaar, tali baja do. Thank you. And to chair this session, we have with us Mamta Dhingra, Mamta Dhingra, founder, independent PR consultant and podcaster, Literal Sutra. So please give it up for none other than Mamta Dhingra, who will lead this session. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. So these are the members for this beautiful panel discussion on nurturing the next generation communication professionals. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Is this on?
Yes. Yes. Mic is on.
Can we show? Is this on?
Just say something.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome on a rather very warm day. Back in the day, in March of maybe 2003, I was completing my post-graduation. And this was the time when we were submitting our thesis, which was, and I chose integrated marketing communications. But then I had no idea that 2 decades hence, we would still be talking about its importance, and I'd be, of all the things, chairing a panel. So thank you so much for having me. And however, the 20 years and what has changed, and I'd just like to throw a few points here, is that I had no idea that advertising will cease to find traces in physical forms. We had no clue that PR will move away from magazine articles and newspapers completely, and media will no longer be about houses and publications. And to top it all, that consumer will not be a demography or a user profile, but a data point who will actually shy away from running to the stores and prefer to experiences over products. Against this backdrop, I welcome everyone, the esteemed panel, joined by Ankit, Shan, Chiara, and Karan. And in today's discussion, as we take on the need of integrated communication, let me open the session with you, Shan. So you're someone who's radically driven by data and have been at the helm of leadership roles also across industries and sectors with a great understanding on consumer journeys and go-to-market strategies. As we stand on yet another cusp of technological innovation, disruption, how would you map the changing face of integrated communications?
So very interesting question, and I think that I'll divide it into 2 parts. Firstly, what is integrated communication? And secondly, the relevance of it in the current scenario. So what it is, integrated communication in simple terms is like a symphony of marketing channels, and independently each of these marketing channels are on their own, like very standalone, sufficient, but together, when they come together, obviously they captivate the audience. So you can look at it like a symphony of marketing channels. Why it is important in today's scenario, I think we'll need to understand from it as to what has changed over the last 2 to 3 decades. So the most obvious thing that has changed, and it looks at our faces, is the boom in media, which has led to complete media fragmentation. So naturally, you have to depend on different media for you to be able to communicate the same message, right? Earlier, you could probably just have like one advertising which was relevant and it would play for many days together and still be relevant, but now you can't do that. But this is the most obvious sort of thing, the factor that is changed. But there are two underlying factors which are not so evident to us. One of them is the way that the consumer is making a decision today, right? So in the earlier days, you would have like an ad that would play, and if it was a nice emotional ad or it was relevant to the category, the consumer would sort of remember it, and then when they were in the market to buy, they would be able to refer back to their memory. But today, it's not like that. Today, the moment, there are so many categories, and within each category, there are so many brands that the moment a consumer is in the market to buy, they will first say, okay, I don't remember which one, but let me do a search. So which media becomes important? Search media on digital. Then you're like, okay, but you know, there's so many categories and so much being said, let me look at somebody else who's kind of bought it before me. So which media becomes important? Influencers, right? Then you'll be like, yeah, I don't know about this company versus this company, so let me look at some credible sources. So which media becomes important? PR. So the same message now has to be broken down into different ways. I mean, the purchase process itself has changed, and what we refer to is that earlier it was a lean back way of making decisions versus now it's a very lean forward. Like literally the consumer is doing a lot of work to be able to make a complicated decision, right? And now, as a response to this, look at how creatives have changed. So earlier, the creatives were made to a melody and a beat.
Yeah.
Right? And Mamta, let's play a little game. So I'm going to kind of say the first line of it, and let's see if you can remember the second line of it, right?
All right.
So let's say washing powder.
Nirma.
Correct. Okay. For example, Roshni Deta.
Bajaj.
Right. Okay. Similarly, like Vajradanti. Anybody wants to take a? Perfect. So this is how creatives were made earlier, right? They were made to a melody and a beat, and these ads are, I think the general audience is very young. These ads that I'm talking about are at least 20 to 30 years old. They were made that time, and you guys still remember it. So they were made for memorability. But now what has happened is creatives are being made for this active search. Right, so when the consumer is buying, they look at different media. So the way that we make creatives also is to be able to support the consumer purchase process, right? So the creatives itself have changed, and all these factors now, don't they sort of start becoming obvious to you as to what is the importance of integrated communication? You've got to break the message down into different parts, be present where the consumer is looking for you, and make it relevant for effectively coming together.
Very
Does that make
interesting.
sense?
Very interesting point. Indeed, I'll move the needle to you, Ankit, now. And you've been an early starter in life and marketing space and seen so many changes also unfold across sectors, events, agencies, startup, front running, building from ground up. Help us understand the way that you have navigated the challenges that may have come or continue to come when you are looking to put things under integrated comms. What is this game altogether for you?
So I will start it with two important things over here. One thing which has happened over a period of time is the audiences have gone matured.
Yeah.
Right? Today, just to give you an example, there was a time when if there's a Shah Rukh or a Salman movie without even a storyline, it would cross 300, 500 crores. And today people look at what is the content inside it. So the maturity has come in a lot. Plus with this whole digital era or with this whole internet and data disruption, the attention span on a specific format has gone really down, right? And as Shan mentioned, that hence today you see that when you are trying to market anything, it cannot be one single platform or one single space. It has to be across, depending on what is the kind of platform you are choosing, basis that your messaging comes into place, right? So over a period of time, this is the biggest change that we've noticed, right? That the audiences have gone mature. Today, people go on a Google, they search something, they know that the first three things are a sponsored ad. They will not click on it because they know that somebody is putting. So that is where your SEOs, your PR, because that is where you are looking for an, for something which is more trustworthy, which has to come in organically. It is not something which has been pushed up by money, right? And also the fact that because of so many things and so many options, even the trust levels have gone down. Today for us, we don't even go to a restaurant without checking out a Zomato rating or a Zomato review about a restaurant, right? So that is where the whole integrated marketing, which is a mix of your digital, your search, let it be your influencer, your PR, all comes into place. If I'm missing even one of it, it is like I'm missing a leg on a chair.
Right.
Right, and especially into businesses which are of high values, and especially for startups, right? We are trying to create a market. It is not a common habit. Like when I was with Ola, it was not a habit for people to look at cabs for a point-to-point transfer.
Correct.
It was generally looked at for an 8-hour, 12-hour rental. So we are trying to create a category as well. So it is not only about trying to do sales, but it's also about education.
Yeah.
Right. The current startup where I am working at Strata, it's again an investment platform in real estate. It is a very high ticket size thing. So even if people want to, unless you don't trust, today in India, trust, that comfort is very important when you are investing money, right? And hence you need to be present in multiple ways, in multiple formats. One is to get that attention span, and second, from a startup standpoint, also to educate people that something like this is possible, something like this can be done, and that helps you build your customer journey, let it be from a long-term perspective or from an investment perspective. So I think this is what has drastically changed over time.
But then the real challenge is in keeping the narrative in sync, right? So how do you tread that? How do you ensure that there is that consistency of messaging across so many platforms? There's so much is available now. So how, as a communicator, is this an uphill task?
It is a big task because now you have to have skill sets accordingly, right?
Yeah.
Initially, there would be like you would have one copywriter in your team or one person who would write everything. But today, every platform behaves differently.
Yeah.
The engagement on every platform is really different, and in a way, that's also a beauty of this thing that that always keeps you apprised. You always feel that you still don't know. You keep learning, you keep adapting, and you keep integrating that into your into your marketing and communication plans. So, it is a challenge, but I see the challenge is for good because that is where the whole adaptation is coming. Probably 5 years, 7 years down the line, no one would have even thought that influencers in itself couldn't be such a huge channel, right? I'm pretty sure everyone over here knows that when Ronaldo just moved those two Coke bottles from a PR interview, the market cap of that company lost $1 billion within a few seconds. So that's the power of influencers, right? Yeah. Which probably 5 years down the line, before COVID or before TikTok coming in and stopping, no one would have even imagined that this can be something that can happen. So, but the beauty about the industry is it is coming, people are adapting, people are getting used to it and are using it actively today, right? So it is a challenge, but I feel the challenge is for good. It just keeps you on your apprise or on your heels and toes to keep updated about what is happening in the market.
Yeah, I would like to bring you in, Chiara, here into the discussion. Tell us the whole jing bang of thing from a creative lens. Coming from the strategy and the creative viewpoint. Then how do you see this playing out? Integrated communication.
I think it boils down to being able to resonate with your audiences, and a lot of it is tech driven because so much of our behavior change has happened because of that.
Yeah.
You have multiple touch points. No one is going to see you in just one medium or just one platform, and you have to ensure that as a brand, you're standing for something cohesively. Wherever they may meet you, wherever they may associate with you, they are clicking with you and clicking with the message and purpose that you stand for. That does not mean that you have the same thing everywhere. It also means that you're adapting your messaging and your core purpose into these varied formats that will work for the audience that is receiving them. Yeah. So it's not just your brand and your purpose, your content and publishing strategy becomes just as significant and just as important to make sure that you are reaching people in a medium and a format that they already understand, that they're already familiar with. So it becomes that hurdle of getting your message across is not lost in translation because you're communicating in a format that they already know.
Yeah, but that's an interesting point what you're talking about. But here I would also like to bring in the aspect of diverse stakeholders.
Absolutely.
Right. So now I may be an investor, and I'm not looking at the Instagram.
Correct.
Right. But an Instagram has the power to bring my brand or my investee company down. Something like what we saw happen to Bonvita. Very, very, very recent example. So how do you keep a track? How do you keep that which communication, which channel is reaching out to which stakeholder, and ultimately what is happening around the brand in that chaos?
So I think that boils down to a lot of homework being done for us as comms professionals.
Yes.
The way we've sort of approached it, and I think that's something that clicks really well even when you're trying to be on the same page as your client. It helps to have a unified creative platform. Now, this is not necessarily something you will take to market, but it's a communication positioning and a creative positioning that enables you to be cohesive across your own earned, paid, shared media. And your campaign may have a message, your campaign may take various shapes and forms, but so long as everyone is in line with and the brand is standing behind this idea of a really robust, well thought through creative platform that roots itself very firmly in that brand's purpose, it becomes very almost instinctive to be able to think of what story arcs will work, what narratives are relevant for which stakeholders, and build out messaging for each of those story arcs and each of those narratives accordingly.
So does that mean we need to constantly keep upskilling? Because if I'm a PR person, I need to know what is happening in the advertising and then know what is happening in the influence space,
Absolutely.
etc.
So to give you an example, when we work on even brainstormings internally, right? It's always ideas over hierarchies. It doesn't matter what team you've come from. It doesn't matter what your execution role may be. In that 1 hour brainstorming that we have, a PR person can give ideas for an influencer campaign. Social media person can give ideas for an on-ground activation, and fostering that kind of integrated thinking at a very individual level, even for creatives, becomes very important. You should be able to take a particular message and think of fun, innovative ways to slice and dice it across platforms, across mediums.
Give us an anecdote, any campaign that you would like to bring to.
So in terms of communicating with diverse stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
We had a client that was working in the developmental nutrition space to promote biofortified crops. Okay, which basically meant that your regular gehu had an added zinc so that, you know, whoever had to consume that basic staple also got that nutritional benefit of a zinc in their bodies, right? Now, this was something that was in a tricky space because it was not a GM crop. It did not have any of the bad press that is associated with GM foods. But you were at the same time trying to convince farmers to grow this. You also had to convince people across the agri-value chain, from your millers to your suppliers to your wholesalers, that this is a crop that is worth selling. It has an added nutritional value. It has all these benefits. You're also trying to convince consumers that this is a better, food to buy. This will help your health and has all these benefits. And at the same time, you're also trying to get government stakeholders invested in promoting this. You're trying to get CSR investors also to sort of participate and push this, when they're already working with rural communities. And navigating that meant that we were communicating one set of benefits for the farmer, saying this will help your crops in a certain way, this will help your soil, this will help your profitability for your crops. Any of this crop that you consume for your family also has health benefits. And at the same time, you're trying to convince government stakeholders that you need to transform the entire agri-value chain and put in the infrastructure in place. So there we're having events to communicate to them. For the farmers, we're creating jingles and stuff that can go out at a very grassroots level, even arming the project managers who are going from village to village with an essential literature. That would actually click immediately with those audiences. Whereas your consumer-facing side was obviously very different.
Yeah.
And I think innovating the same message that we had, which was that biofortified foods is a sustainable nutrition solution for the country, impacts you at an individual level, impacts you at a societal level, impacts you at a community level, and designing your communication with that core message throughout is what I mean. So our creative platform was very clearly this sustainable nutrition for all. Yeah. But the way we sent that message to the stakeholders was in a way that was relevant to them.
Yeah.
Why do I need to listen to this is the question that we were answering for each of them.
So in this case, and Karan, I'd like to move to you and bring in your viewpoint here, that does it become a daunting task to cherry pick and address each group and set or subset of stakeholders when the communication, and the lines are blurring? So a PR is doing a part of advertising, the advertising is doing a part of influencing, the influence is doing a part of something else. So how do you really percolate the message down in a very, very integrated, symphonized, and yet very clear, demarcated way that this is my role, this is your role? Or is it actually really blurring and breaking down? And specifically with respect to your brand, how would you do that? Because you're also globally present and the consumer is really, really diverse.
Okay, so that's the fun part, right? Lots of things have been said. I think the one thing that I want to start off with is that there is a fundamental difference between an apple and a carrot, right? An apple is an apple and a carrot is a carrot. So irrespective of whichever medium, whichever platform, whichever publishing house, you're either speaking about apple or carrot and you're not confusing the two, right? So the identity of the product, the identity of the brand remains sacrosanct. Let's move with apples a bit more. Apples come in how many colors? Guys, anybody? How many colors of apples do you know?
3.
Loud, man. Oh. There's a red apple, there's a green apple, there's a golden apple, then there'll be combinations of these colors as well, right? Yeah. Now, if you're selling a red apple, then the redness of your apple needs to be a constant communication factor, again, across all medium and platforms that you're talking. Right? You can't be talking about red apples in one place and golden apples in another place. Just because one communication is conventional media led, another communication is so-called new age media led.
Yeah.
Right? So the point I'm trying to make is that your brand and the essence and the soul of the brand remains sharply defined across all media platforms, across all stakeholder groups. Right?
And must so, rightly so.
The second is creating content. Right?
Yeah.
Creating content, obviously now each media ecosystem and each stakeholder consumes content through their own context. Are you guys with me? All of you peering into your laptops, are you guys with me? Yeah? So I need to know that what is your context in which my message will be understood and accepted by you, right? And that leads to various formats. So obviously newspaper advertising is very different from search engine advertising, is very different from blog writing or communication through blogs, etc., etc. So you adapt yourself to various formats in which this communication is being put out, right? But go back to the difference between apple and carrot. You need to be very clear that you're an apple and not a carrot, or a carrot and not an apple, right? That does not change across the kinds of communications you're creating or the core messaging that you're putting out across different platforms, right? Now let's come to stakeholders. Now stakeholders are interesting. Stakeholders are people who could be your consumers, who are consuming communication through various platforms. Somebody is more social forward, somebody is more print forward, depending on age groups, demographics, etc., etc. The other set of stakeholders are beyond consumers, which are people who invested in you perhaps, private equity funds, venture capitalists, boards of large corporate companies, which have a lot of independent board members, etc., etc. Now, each one of them will consume what you want to say from their own lens, right? The investor will say, okay, all the faff that you are talking about is fine. Tell me, when am I going to make what kind of return and how much, how fast, how soon, right? Whereas an audience or a normal consumer of the product has got nothing to do with the fact that are you going to make money or not. For that person, perhaps the product at the best value / discount is the best music to their ears, right? So you obviously need to balance as a brand custodian or a marketing person or a marketing revenue person. You need to balance stakeholder expectations and you need to pitch the same thing, right? So for example, the investor has no clue about Instagram, but what he wants to hear or she wants to hear is how much money am I going to make at what time. And you need to tell that person that, listen, I will make you the money that I've committed, perhaps even more, but I need to do this through doing some things on a platform you don't understand. So back off and let me do what I can do to get you the money that you need to kind of receive, right? When you go to cross-cultural audiences, so we have fertility management clinics in India and in the Middle East, and now some opening up in Europe as well. There you realize that again the cultural context of people changes.
Absolutely.
And therefore the communication is being received through the cultural context they come from. Forget India and abroad. Within India, somebody in Tamil Nadu consumes communication very differently from someone in Mumbai, and consumes communication very differently someone in Delhi, right? Likewise, a Venezuelan, Emirati, Parisian, British, everybody comes with their own social constructs of communication. I think the real excitement is for you to be constantly trying to figure out how you can communicate more effectively to each one of these individual groups without diluting the core of your communication, right? Without turning your apple into a carrot or the other way around, right? And honestly, that's really the thrill.
Yeah.
That's really the entire excitement of doing this, right? And I think with integrated comms is always there. Integrated comms is here. Integrated comms will be there for the next couple of decades as well. The only thing that's happening is that earlier integrated comms was more about TV and newspaper, magazines. Now integrated comms is about all these other channels and all these other ecosystems that are also opening up through which people are consuming content, right? So long live integrated comms.
Yeah, and with that, the pertinent question is then how do we maximize the campaign impact? How do we really know what is working where and effectively with which set of audience and which geography? So anyone to take that point up?
I mean, there's a lot of data which is available, which you sort of tend to measure, especially with the advent of digital today and with the advent of a lot of technology that measures the impact and the interdependence of one versus the other. And something that most brands should start doing now if they're not already doing, which is measuring. It is possible to start looking at collaboration in a far more measured way, in a far more, in a way that sort of builds over a period of time and therefore starts giving you results, and effectiveness and efficiency. So it's not as difficult as it used to be earlier. I think with a lot of digital and technology, it has become much easier now.
But
can I just add to that? Yes. So I think we do a whole lot of performance marketing campaigns, right, for lead generation, right? Simplest thing to understand your ROI and effectiveness, how much money you put, how many leads you've generated, how many visits you've had, how many patients have converted from the visits that you've had.
Yeah.
But you see that while running performance marketing campaigns gives you a certain output, you do a certain PR mass media activity, the conversion rates improve by 15%.
Correct.
Yeah. Then you layer it up with a communication on TV or newspaper or any of the broad-based channels, you see that the conversion rate further improves by 30%, right? So it's foolhardy to expect that there's going to be a simple answer to this question. But if you do this intelligently, with every incremental platform that you are adding to your communication mix, you can see the core performance improving by certain deltas.
Yeah.
And that really, I think, is the trick to understand which platform works very well with another platform and how it continues to build up one step at a time.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and I think you can obviously put in your views there, that it's not only about the conversions that we are looking at, it's the value, it's the recall, it's the loyalty, and so many other things that are coming around while we are doing that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important, especially when you're setting out to address a campaign, to take on a certain communication challenge. Define very clearly what your qualitative parameters are and what your quantitative parameters are. Because there are times when your qualitative impact can be far more resounding and far more relevant with that very specific TG, even though you may not have had the mass impact, so to speak. So defining those parameters at a very early stage in your campaign also helps fuel the kind of input that you will put into it creatively, the kind of thought process you will put into it creatively, because then you're trying to figure out this persona that you are trying to speak with, this person that you are trying to speak with, what are the KPIs for them? Yeah,
you would like to
I
add?
think exactly the same thing. The thing that has changed with data is, like, first I'll just resonate that it is impossible to tell that which channel or which platform is actually giving you that thing. As I said, we can just measure the delta, but most of the time it's an impact of all of it together, right? But especially with these app-based platforms, at least that is where my experience comes in. What we started doing in that is, while we know that we have to be on all the platforms, what we started doing is we started understanding the user who's using it and started creating a surrogate to that, or started creating a replica of that person, and then started integrating it into our plans.
Something like a user persona?
A simple example, right? Like, let's say if I'm doing a TV campaign, when as per the TV norms or a TV industry, 7:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. is the peak hour.
Prime time.
But when I'm at Ola, I know my peak bookings are happening at 9 and my average ride time is 50 minutes. So my user is only reaching home at 10. Why should I invest at a 7:30 prime time when I know that my user is only going to be in front of the TV at 10 p.m. So that is, this is the kind of data usage that today the brands have started doing and integrating it into the plans, right? So that is very important, because no one would here say that only a TV or a print or a PR is going to drive business for me. It is going to be everything. But how best you can use it is now becoming a more important thing that we look into now.
Correct.
So agree and disagree with both my honorable panelists. Agree to the extent, I think very important point Chiara made, that you need to know what kind of success metrics need to be set for each one of those campaigns, for each one of those platforms, right? Because certain success metrics will be different. So you need to know from an ROI point of view what is qualitative, what is quantitative, and don't make the mistake of trying to have a qualitative ROI translate into a quantitative ROI, right? So that part completely agree.
Which has been a debate forever, like advertising and PR.
Which elements are actually working for you? There is something called multimedia modeling. So if you look at multimedia modeling, you will figure out which elements of the mix as you keep adding different elements. And that's exactly where I was coming from when I'm saying you can figure out what deltas are happening with the inclusion of another element or an exclusion of another element. So you know how much money is coming your way because of that, right? And the last point is that, I'm not talking about Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That's a different kind of business. And there are many businesses, but I'm saying for people who are in the core business of selling products and services, what matters is revenue and profitability, right? To get revenue, you need customer preference, and you need to sustain consumer preference over a while for revenue to keep happening. Now, to sustain consumer preference, you will have to do a whole lot of this qualitative stuff as well, right? So even the qualitative, creative, content building stuff, if it eventually leads to increased revenue and better profitability, that ultimately is the business of a business.
Absolutely.
The core business of a business is to do business.
Yeah. So that's where the breaking of the silos really comes, right? You have to be very, very collaborative, working cross-functional. Shan, your viewpoints on that any strategy you would like to share that can foster better collaboration, and then
whom does the buck pass to really in case of there is a slip out? Then who takes the responsibility also?
Very interesting question, but I don't want to sort of say who does the responsibility belong to. So see, I'm a very fundamental based person. My thinking always starts from bottom up as to what is important, and I would say most important thing to realize is the fact that collaboration actually leads to predictability. Okay, if you are working in silos, you will only know your own side of the story. But if you work in a collaborated way, you will be able to understand the interdependence of one media versus the other, and over a period of time understand how to leverage one to make the qualitative or the quantitative KPI move up, right? And why is predictability so important? Because markets, valuation, market value, brand value, all of that is rewarded by predictability, right? The more investment you make, if you are able to make it in a predictive way, you will obviously get better results, more effectiveness, more efficiencies, right? So collaboration is the key. There is no way. Now, if you look at collaboration, let's just break it down into there is the human side of it, which is the teams, the various people who work on it. There is a technology side of it, which is your processes, where you store data. There are these two. What brings it together, and to answer your question, Mamta, what brings it together is the intent of collaboration. As long as you have the intent and you understand why it's important for you, it is important because without it, you will not be able to move forward in an integrated manner, right? So it is something that has to be driven top down.
Yeah.
And my appeal to all the people who are owners of businesses, investors, owners of brands is that drive collaboration top down. It's a business imperative.
Fabulous. So just on the ending note, because we've already had the buzzer go up, so how leveraging data, and I would let each one of you give maybe a one-line answer to it, that how leveraging data and insights can have a better decision making in integrated communications. While certain things are very scientific and data driven, but what about things like PR? Where there is still a gray area, because what article on a Fortune or a Forbes will do to your company's stocks and perception value can still not be gauged or be preempted by any yardstick as such. So first to you, and then we can go.
So, gentleman, doing a keynote presentation a couple of sessions earlier, very interestingly said that today generative algorithms pick up everything that's out there across various media platforms, right? Anything about the brand, whether it's on a press story, media story, whatever story. I think if you're able to identify the source from which these stories are being picked up and the kind of consumers who are reading and consuming those stories, use that as the fundamental basis of your data strategy on targeting people through either behavioral or contextual targeting methodologies, there is an immensely higher possibility of success. And by success, I'm saying the efficacy of communication, the ROI on the money that you're spending will be that much better served.
Yeah, over to you, Ankit.
I think the biggest thing that PR does and especially for new age startups and everything, it becomes the way you want to put out your story. Because when you talk about apps, there's no one who's talking on the other side. You are just integrating or you're just talking to an application.
Yeah.
Right. So PR and social media are the only two ways where a brand can put out their side of the story as well. So it plays a very important role that way to maintain that narrative in the market that you want to keep for your brand.
So it would be something appropriate to say that you are humanizing the data or the analytics. How about you, Kyra?
I think when you're coming up with a creative strategy or a creative approach, data and insights work very differently in terms of data helps you determine the who and the where and the that part of it. So your publishing strategy gets largely determined by that. Whereas the insights part of it is far more behavior driven. It's far more relationship driven. So it answers the why and the how far more accurately. And it's very important when you're approaching the challenge, the communication challenge, to be able to understand what is your relevant data and what is a pertinent insight for your audience.
Great.
I think enough and more has been said. I think I would like to just sort of leave a message to all the PR professionals out here is that there is multiple ways in which you can use PR and integrate it into the integrated communications thing. Actively, it would be more about crisis management, building credibility, but passively, it would be about building the entire story of a brand, and that's how you guys should position it. I mean, that's how the consumers perceive it. So whether you have data or not, it doesn't matter. This is how consumers perceive it, and so go and sell your platforms accordingly.
Super. With that, we come to the wrap of the session, and I'd just like to say on the parting note that integrated purpose, mission, and values will be the guideposts for brands to communicate their whys and hows. And integrated comms will always be the mechanism to bring life to the businesses and whenever the brands show up. So thank you so much for being a patient audience, and with that we call it a wrap to the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again. Please give it up for the entire panel. We have with us Mamta Dhingra, Ankit Shah, Chiara Saldanha, Karan Kumar, and Shan Jain. Thank you so much for sharing such valuable insights. And time for you to say 1, 2, 3, cheese.